I didn't want to invest in a company that was doing like lettered vitamins throughout, but I was basically looking for companies, who was kind of thinking differently, who was kind of approaching this problem statement quite differently. I think the differentiation that we picked out, we said that look, a customer today basically wants to be engaged, right? A customer wants to feel special. So let's say, for example, if I am based in Gurgaon, right, which is typically like a dry climate, as opposed to, let's say, someone who would be based in Calcutta or Bombay, which is largely humid. So the products that are going to be sent to both of us are actually going to be completely different. A very common thing is, आप sugar हटा दो, date syrup डाल दो. Okay, but honestly, both are equally, bad for you as a customer, right? Just think about it logically. मैं आपको एक better shampoo दे दूंगा. It is not going to change the face of the earth. But a typical tech company, if it kind of comes into play, it is a disruptive story. Very, very few companies that I've seen that have made like 200x returns.
Only one company is there
Yeah.
in India that has made 200x returns for the
Yeah.
investors.
True. True.
Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia. Welcome to 100x Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I have with me Abhishek Goenka, Head of Investments for RPSG Group. RPSG is a very well-known group in digital to consumer, and they have started investing in D2C brands in 2018. In today's episode, we are going to dive into what is D2C, why did D2C become so popular in India, and what are the next 5 years of D2C look like. So if any of you wonders what D2C is, D2C is direct to consumer. It started with when brands like Unilever, PepsiCo, had their own distribution models, but they couldn't control the end consumer experience end to end. So thereby, intellectuals from these companies who knew how to build products for consumers, how to distribute them, they knew packaging, they started moving out and they started building consumer brands that today are known as Mama Earth, Boat, Noise, that they wanted that you could buy as a consumer from their own website. They could ship it to you. They could control the entire experience, right from your buying to payments to shipping to the product reaching your home. And even as a consumer, you could rate, you could initially talk to the management team and could relay your feedback, and using that feedback they could iterate and improve on the product really fast. And today, as we see, Mama Earth, Noise, Boat, they are 1,000 crore plus revenue companies based on the D2C strategy. So welcome Abhishek to the podcast.
So that thank you so much for having me here.
Abhishek, you have done like really interesting work in the last 4 years with RPSG Group. Tell us about some of the largest brands that you have been part of as a first check, and what do these brands do, where they are in terms of their revenue, and what made them reach there.
So Sadat, we started investing in 2018, with an idea of investing largely in Series A of consumer brands, which were built online first. Some of the more well-known investments in our portfolio are the likes of Soul Store, mCaffeine, Skincraft, Vedix, Plix, True Elements. These are all checks, or these are all companies where we were the first institutional check in the company. As we were kind of discussing just before this podcast, now out of portfolio of about 12 odd companies, we've got six of them, which are north of 100 crore revenue mark. And predominantly, these have been online revenues.
And I remember you also mentioned that three of your portfolio have also crossed 300 crore
Yeah,
revenue mark.
that's right.
So, in your view, what is exactly D2C?
Honestly, D2C as a concept has existed in India for 50 odd years. Let me give you an example. I mean, I'm sure in our childhoods, we would have all seen a quality walls, thela that used to come actually selling these ice creams, right? Technically, that's also D2C. Okay. A company, let's say, running its own exclusive brand outlet in a mall, right, is also D2C. Right. The way you also kind of define D2C, anything, any model where a brand kind of touches the customer directly and is able to control the customer experience from start to finish, right? In my head, that's the definition of D2C, right? I think what we've been seeing over the last 4 to 5 odd years is the entire advent of online or e-commerce D2C that's kind of coming to the forefront, right? On the back of, let's say, Shopify becoming really popular, Amazon becoming super large, the payment gateways, the delivery infrastructure like Delivery, Shiprocket, Ecom Express, right? I think it's the entire ecosystem that actually has, it was going through an entire like I would say digital disruption over the last 5 odd years, and that's the reason why online D2C as a it's almost become like a buzzword.
And if you can dive deep into, right, the four W's, why was the timing right for D2C to explode in India? Right? Who were the people building it that made it work? And what are the products that worked in D2C?
Let's rewind about 7 or 8 years and let's look at a practical example. Okay, maybe all the four W's are going to get answered just through that example, right? If let's say about 8 or 10 years back, there was a company that was trying to build up a brand in the country, right? How would that company or how would that group kind of go about doing it, right? They would first do an intense customer survey, or let's say an R&D spanning anywhere between one to 2 odd years, right, trying to find where is the gap in the customer demand, or what's the issue that the customer is essentially facing, and simultaneously their R&D teams would be working on a product which kind of caters to that demand. Once that product starts coming into some shape or form, etc., starts passing this stability tests, etc., any company would start setting up a distribution team. To start off with, the size of the team would be a minimum of 400 to 500 odd people, right? They would then start painting the entire town red or brown in terms of advertisements, hoardings, prints, etc., right? And they would start placing their products. Okay, and once the product is basically placed, they would wait for a few months and then start doing, again, those customer surveys in terms of understanding whether the customer is actually liking that product, what is the feedback, etc., right? Now, this entire process, and this is quite a standard process, which I think 10 out of 10 companies had to adopt, right? This entire process would land up taking about 4 to 5 years, and you would easily be down, 100 to 200 odd crores. Okay. At the same time, you would never own the customer. Okay. Now, this was a scenario that existed probably a decade back. Now let's understand what's happening, let's say right now, and what has actually started happening over the last 4 to 5 years. If let's say I have a product, okay, maybe it is not a product that kind of passes through each and every test, customer test, etc. It's like a minimum viable product or maybe a MVP plus, right? I go and launch that product. Okay. Now today launching a product, whether on an Amazon or on a company's own website, very, very easy, right? Very, very cheap as well. You go launch the product, you actually start, the customers actually start buying your product, they start leaving feedback with you. You can actually go and, in some of the cases, you can actually go and call the customers, give them certain incentives, etc., make them a power users, collect feedback, right? Take the feedback, iterate the product, relaunch it, again do the same process, right? And you can keep doing this, till some point of time when you see that the product is almost, close to perfected, or at least come to a level, what you would have initially done when you would have done about 2 to 3 years of R&D, right? And that too at a much faster rate, at that too significantly cheaper, right? The same number of 100 to 150 cr that I was talking about, you land up spending probably less than one tenth of that now, right? This, I think this model or this way of thinking is what essentially changed, right? And then your next question in terms of why this change happened, right? This why, definitely, let's say from a company or a brand's perspective, this was a lot faster, this was a lot cheaper, this was a lot more efficient. I think from a customer's viewpoint, look, a customer of today is quite different in his or her way of purchasing, their awareness levels and their loyalty levels, right? So I don't think so someone who's 25 years of age today kind of relates to the age old brands in the same way that, let's say, we, or let's say our parents used to kind of relate to, right? So that loyalty level is really low. At the same time, I think the customer of today wants to be aware of what's actually going into that product, what are each of the ingredients, right? What good does each of the ingredient do, which are the bad ingredients, is it other, let's say, other ingredients sourced ethically, is the brand or the product doing good for the planet, etc. So these are considerations which did not exist 10 years back, right? And just think about it, for a brand that was initially doing like marketing like 10 years back, what were the ways of engaging with the customer? Either you would have a billboard which would have like maybe 20 words written on top, or you would have a print ad, which would maybe have 40 words written on it, or you would have like a TV commercial, right? Which again, You would have to cater to different thing and not only the utility of the brand, right? But the moment there is a web page, moment there's an Insta, the amount of content that you can actually share and engage with a customer has never been seen before.
Hi everyone. Before we begin, I would like to share that this podcast is brought to you by Prime Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund led by Amir Somani, Shripati Acharya, and Sanjay Swami. Prime is often the first institutional investor in category defining tech startups in fintech, SaaS, healthcare, and education, such as MyGate, Quizzes, Planet Spark, Bolt, and Clip. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in.
Nowadays, if you open a website or any product of the company, right from the genesis of the product to how to use that product, what are each of the ingredients, where are some of the ingredients procured from, where is the product manufactured, each and everything is kind of mentioned in that particular page. The customer of today loves to engage with this sort of a content. And one more. So that's part A. Part B, again, think about it. Let's take your case. Okay. So let's say 10 years back, you would have, let's say, you would have seen a new ad of a shampoo and you would have gone to your Kirana store and bought that shampoo. Okay. What if that shampoo did not suit you? Or let's say, what if once you kind of opened that bottle, there was something wrong with that bottle or whatever? You, as a customer, right, had no power, right? At the most, you would have gone to your retail guy and said, "Ki bhaiya, product defective hai, ya, it doesn't suit my hair." I really doubt if you would have been able to help you in any manner whatsoever, right? It was a dead purchase for you. You, as a customer, were completely alienated from the brand. Now, think about a scenario. If you have a similar sort of an experience, just try leaving a comment, on either a Facebook or an Amazon, Twitter, etc. The brand, someone from the brand is going to approach you in 24 hours, right? They're going to offer you a replacement, they're going to offer you a refund, they're going to offer you something so that you're happy. This empowerment, right, was not even perceived by customers till about a decade back, right? This has what has changed. Okay, customers love this model, brands love this model, and that's why, honestly, that is the reason why, at least let's say from a customer engagement or a customer love perspective, these models have worked beautifully.
Got it. And some of the other things that also changed, right? Now everybody is able to order on their smartphone. So first is
True.
advent of smartphones throughout India. Like so more than 500 million smartphones,
Yeah.
50 crores
True.
smartphones throughout the country. Then Geo coming, right? So internet became dirt cheap in India.
Yeah. True. Cost of data in, at least in India, is the lowest globally.
Yeah. And the third is the logistics network that Amazon, Flipkart initially did, and then which on top of it, startups like Delivery built upon it,
That's right.
and then made the incumbents like Blue Dart and everybody else match to that kind of standards.
That's right.
So logistics also exploded, internet also exploded, like the physical infra exploded, the digital infra also exploded,
Yes,
and
that's right.
as you mentioned, for a customer, everything became really at a touch of a button, right? The brand could deliver even on the same day faster than the customer could go to, let's say, 5 or 10 kilometers down to a
That's true.
supermarket,
That is true.
and the customer could communicate at the same time that is the product what he or she expected or not.
That is true. That's true. Absolutely.
Quick feedback loop along with what you mentioned, the power to the consumer change the landscape. But what has also happened is now D2C brands, there are so many of them today, right? Anybody can launch a D2C brand sitting at their home. In fact, most of the brands are built in homes or garages today, and they start selling on Amazon. And once founders find product market fit, they keep on launching new products.
True.
And now every D2C brand wants to do everything, at least in their category, whether it be
True.
food, whether it be skin, whether it be fashion. So how does a D2C brand keeps on differentiating themselves? Like the timing for many of the companies that you invested in earlier, 2018 kind of time frame, like mCaffeine. For mCaffeine, that the timing was right. They came out with a very different product. Nobody could imagine that out of coffee beans, how could you make a skin cream or a shampoo? That was the difference. So in D2C, I see that the ability to build a 10x better product than Unilever is not required. What you need is a different product which could
Yep.
appeal to a very small subset of customers, and then it could expand the market or the awareness. But that was the right time, right, to build a D2C brand, 2015 kind of, right, or 16 to 2022. Today there would be like more than 1,000 D2C brands in India. As a venture capitalist, for you, which brand to invest in? Like for example, you come at when a ideally at a 1 crore monthly revenue or a 50 lakhs monthly revenue.
Yeah, usually.
So you are looking for a brand that could go to 50 cr or 100 cr ideally, right, at
Correct.
5 to 6 years time frame.
Hmm.
It's become very difficult, right? Because for brands competing for the same eyeballs, Instagram being crowded by like 1,000 D2C brands, how do you pick out the
Okay.
winners in
Okay.
today's climate?
Good question, Siddharth. So, Siddharth, one of the philosophies that we've always had from day one, right, is to never invest in Me Too stories, right? Every company, every product that you would see in our portfolio would have a certain level of differentiation, would have a certain level of first mover, of would have like a first mover in terms of innovation in that particular product category, right? So while you took examples of let's say mCaffeine, etc., which were, let's say, one of our initial investments that we made in like early 2019, right? Now let me give you another example. Let's say something like Plix is a wellness, nutrition and supplements company focused largely on millennials as a TG, right? This is an investment that we made sometime, end of last year. And, again, at a time when, there were probably at least 10 odd investments that have already happened, in the nutrition and wellness space, right? And there were companies which were significantly larger than, let's say, something like a Plix. I think the way we kind of chose the company, and just to give you like a flavor in terms of our, filtering criteria, we saw that most of the wellness companies at that point of time were focusing largely on performance, or either performance as a criteria. So let's say people who were running, or people, who were going to the gym, etc., right? Or they were essentially focusing a lot on, let's say, the mass market in terms of either children or, your everyday things, right? The uniqueness which we basically saw, that number one, no one was kind of catering to products or catering to a TG which was millennial in the true sense. Okay. And what was a millennial basically looking for? I think the first thing that the millennial was looking for was taste. Okay. Just think about it, right? If I would have told you probably a year or 2 years back that I'm kind of creating a supplement company which is great tasting, and you will say, how does it even make sense, right? आप एक टैबलेट खा रहे हो या कुछ खा रहे हो, टेस्ट क्या होती है? मतलब this is a utilitarian product, right? Just if you want like a vitamin C, just put a tablet, keep sucking on it with that orange flavor, or just gulp it down. But what, let's say, something like a Plix was able to do, they took, let's say, some of these ingredients, let's say like an apple cider vinegar, or let's say, vitamin C or an ashwagandha, right? They created something very, very cool, like an effervescent tablet, and you just drop it in a glass of water. The whole drink kind of lagers. Okay, it gives you the same goodness of an apple cider vinegar shot, which usually tastes horrible. This tastes great, has like 5 calories, zero sugar. Okay, it was an instant hit with respect to customers. Okay, I didn't want to invest in a company that was doing like lettered vitamins throughout. Okay, but I was basically looking for companies, who was kind of thinking differently, who was kind of approaching this problem statement quite differently, right? And that is why, the company has probably now grown to be amongst either the largest, if not the like amongst the top, 2 or 3 companies in this space, right from where it started, being probably the number 10 or number 11 player. So I think, look, this is one of the examples. Another example that I can give you, we funded Skincraft and Vedic sometime in 2020, just the onslaught of the first lockdown, right? And by that point of time, I think there were at least 20, beauty and personal care companies that were already funded, right? There were companies that were larger. We also had a company that was significantly larger, right? But I think the differentiation that we picked out, we said that, look, a customer today basically wants to be engaged, right? A customer wants to feel special. Everyone's kind of providing you a bottle, with a celebrity face, or some exotic ingredients, etc., and are selling that to you. What if we change that value proposition and we offer something to the customer where which is customized to that particular customer, right? From basic things like just the color or the fragrance, to actually solving a need for the customer. So let's say, for example, if I am based in Gurgaon, right, which is typically like a dry climate, as opposed to, let's say, someone who would be based in Calcutta or Bombay, which is largely humid. Okay, so the products that are going to be sent to both of us are actually going to be completely different, right? Now the moment we saw this sort of customer proposition, we spoke to customers and we instantly saw that, look, this is something which has a lot of potential, the customers are actually loving it, and it's a disruptive play, right? We landed up investing in that investment, again, like some of the others, has played out beautifully for us, right? Over the last 3 years the company has grown more than 10x. So I think these are some of the examples, or these are some of the things that we landed up picking up, or kind of identifying that niche or that differentiation, which basically helped us kind of pick the right things, and and eventually I think the portfolios did pretty well.
Dear listeners, before we dive further into the podcast, I would like to welcome Prashant Kanti, Head of Product Management at Zoho Payroll and Zoho Books. Prashant, what is your long term vision for Zoho Payroll?
Thanks, Siddharth. So for us, right, at Zoho, everything we invest for the long term. That includes Zoho Payroll. We will continue to invest in R&D, push innovations in the payroll domain, and what we will also do is payroll straddles both HR and finance, and many times what we see many of these problems as situated applications like payroll or something that just addresses one domain. What we have observed is all these applications have wide implications. All these departments like payroll have wide implications across the organization. So we will continue to ensure that the data residing in payroll applications disseminate across the organization and help with decision making across various departments. Furthermore, we are emerging as a payroll platform. We encourage our customers to solve problems that we ourselves have not imagined. And we are also seeing if payroll plays a larger role in the ecosystem. Like, for example, payroll, we connect with banks. Going forward, we might talk to insurance providers, with the regulatory authorities. So end-to-end automation across the entire ecosystem. So that's our long-term plan for payroll.
Thank you, Prashant. Dear listeners, you will find more about Zoho Payroll in the show notes. Now, let's further continue with the podcast. So, what are the theses that didn't work out for you? Where, like,
Okay.
you explained all which is, good and that played out well.
Sure.
But you would also have some failures in your kitty.
Yes, we do. We do. I'll give you an example. There's one theme that we picked up, which was essentially around beauty and personal care using social commerce. Okay, think about it, for the lack of a better example. Let's say if one was to kind of build out an Amway, for let's say tier 3, tier 4 geography. Okay, or let's say a model like Pinduoduo in China, right, where you could actually use group buying or social commerce, as a mean. So at least our thesis was that most of these brands that we were kind of backing, or that were basically funded, that was largely like a tier 1, tier 2 story. Okay, there was a tier 3, tier 4 customer as well, which obviously was more value conscious, but they were not so inclined towards online as a play. Okay, and typically how that behavior used to happen, if let's say if I would be staying in my building, I, let's say, could be influenced by something like an Amazon or let's say a D2C, but three of my friends would not believe them, right? Either there was no trust element, there was no physical touch thing, they didn't know if they would buy something, what's going to come to their place. So what that at least what the company was trying to do was acquire me, and then use me to actually acquire the remaining 3 or 4 people. And given the fact that they would only spend on CAC once, the remaining 3 would effectively be free, and also the logistics would only go to me and not all the 4, so the logistics cost also would be like a fraction, and that saving would essentially be kind of divided between all the 4 of us and the company. So logically, that model worked beautifully. But I think in the hindsight, look, COVID honestly was one of the dampeners. Let's say, especially let's post, the Chinese investors got banned, which are very, very pro in terms of social commerce. With the advent of Geo, I think the entire tier 3, tier 4 story amongst investors kind of, lost the way. Third, I think to acquire customers at that point of time, at least let's say with physical activation, was very, very difficult. I think it's a combination of, I think, some of these things, that basically caused the company not to work out. So our thesis, let's say, that didn't play out as we had anticipated.
Any other things that didn't work out for you?
I can tell you in one of the portfolios, earlier ones, one of the stories that we're essentially trying to do was, it was a fooding company, right? And initially what we were basically trying to do is move like completely from, typical non-processed products. So the company used to be selling, let's say, stuff like, oats, chia, certain, raw seeds, etc., all of that. At one point of time, we actually saw, while there was a demand for some of those commodities, but just as a company positioning, we thought it would be great to have a lot of processed foods, let's say, within that, which would essentially come with a higher margin, more differentiation with respect to a company, right? But I think one of the things which we kind of struggled with at that point of time was how to kind of, move to that, but at the same time retain the brand core of the company. Right. So we always used to kind of advertise to a customer that, look, this is a truly, truly honest company. If we say that this doesn't have sugar, it means it doesn't have any sugar, it doesn't have any sugar substitutes which are equally harmful for you. So like a very common thing is, sugar hata do, date syrup dal do. Okay, but honestly both are equally, bad for you as a customer, right? But we didn't want to do that. Now to actually create a product, which totally, was, true in the truest sense, that was actually becoming a challenge, right? This was one of the learnings, and by the time you do kind of cross the R&D, etc., for that we kind of created products. It did take us a lot of time. So probably, in that entire cycle, we probably would have missed out probably another, 9 to 10 months of company growth.
Got it. So you would say, like, out of the portfolio of 12, you would have only two companies that didn't work out.
Actually, just one. So even this company that I'm talking about, this probably just set the company back by, as I told you, about 9 to 10 months. The company eventually did really well for us, and this is one of the companies that we exited recently, and we made a decent amount of money on that. So yeah, out of the 12 companies, there's only one that has not worked.
Is this Voltruth that you are talking about?
No, this was True Elements.
Okay. But True Elements was always in a different, right? They were more known for chia seeds, and they
Correct.
were more known for, their muesli.
Yeah. Correct. It's great that you're saying this. You would be surprised once you see, let's say, the current product mix, and where let's say a lot of revenues of the company actually starts coming up is actually, beyond this, right? And this is what, initially what we were trying to, change, right? In the hindsight, maybe I think it was a right decision, and we did exit. Malico did buy a controlling stake in that, and the company is continuing to, doing really, really well.
Got it. You are right now almost on the closure of your second fund, which is a 500 crore fund. Your first
Yeah,
one was 100 crores.
that's right.
So if you could share, right, what were the fund multiples that you could deliver in a span of 4 years till now?
So overall, I think from a fund return perspective, we've consistently been, north of about 60 to 70% in terms of IRR. With a True Elements exit, we've already returned about one third of, the capital deployed that we've done.
Got it. So almost you would be right, as you said, 60-70% higher, between 3 to 4x of the total.
Slightly north of that.
Got it. And thereby, you're saying that D2C as a category, right? If you enter right as a founder or an investor, can be equally rewarding as a technology exit or a technology fund.
Totally. The models, I think, let's look at from a fund perspective. In a typical tech fund, let's say a typical tech fund would land up making about 25, 30 investments. Okay. One or two of them, I'm just taking a industry average, would be like solid superstars, right? Which would give you 100x, 200x.
Like a $5 billion.
Yeah, could be, 100x, 2x, 300x sort of returns. But
Yeah.
there'll be, that return kind of gets compensated over, let's say, those remaining 25, 30 investments, which are virtually zero in size. Whereas, let's say something like a D2C, very, very few companies that I've seen that have made like 200x returns for, the investors. But at the same
Only
time, you
one
could
company is there
yeah.
in India that has made 200x return for the
Yeah,
investors.
true. So, I mean, but to compensate that, you will, ideally, you should have, probably a much lesser number of failures in your portfolio, so that, consistently you can deliver, let's say, a 5 to 10x at least, right, on each of those companies. So that, whenever you look at it from a portfolio perspective, both the funds, land up giving you either similar or maybe slightly differentiated sort of returns. This is what has worked for us.
Why don't we see, right, more D2C unicorns? I think I can count by valuation, like private market valuation. Mamaearth is the only D2C unicorn, and the rest would be, right, boat or noise. By the sheer revenue would be touching that. They might not have realized that valuation
Mhm.
in terms of the round raise last time. But why is such a disparity in the D2C market as compared to like 100 unicorns in the technology market in India?
So that I sincerely hope you ask me this question about 2 years later, and where probably I think the scenario is going to be different, and I'm very very sure about that. Look, I can broadly give you a sense as of today, right? Look, the multiples in both and the risk perception in both the models, whether tech and non-tech, are quite different. In one case, you're actually dealing with a physical product which you can touch and feel, which carries a gross margin, right? And you know that, let's say, consumer companies, whether in India or globally, have kind of traded at a certain multiple, right? You can apply certain premiums or discounts to that multiple, but that benchmark still remains. Okay, so whenever there is you apply that benchmark to a certain revenue, you will come in at a certain valuation, etc. Let's say if I were to call a unicorn, let's say 8,000 crores. Okay, and there's a certain multiple that's remaining, you still have to kind of touch that 1,000 crore sort of a revenue mark to get to that number, as opposed to, let's say, tech companies which have relatively a lesser history in terms of trading, in terms of multiples, etc. There's a lot of disruption for any of the tech companies. Technically, look, a consumer brand is not a disruptive story as such. Just think about it logically. मैं आपको एक better shampoo दे दूंगा, it is not going to change the face of the earth, right? But a typical tech company, if it kind of comes into play, it is a disruptive story. So let's say payments was a disruptive story at a point of time, right? Ola, Uber were disruptive stories, right? Now, I think there is some bit of option premium that people actually give to that disruption in terms of future growth, etc. Right? I think it's a combination of these two. While you feel, if even in both the cases there are revenues there, but the traded multiples are quite different between the two sectors. Probably this is the reason why we haven't seen and heard too many D2C unicorns. But I'm quite certain in the next couple of years this thing would change.
And one thing, coming back to one of the earlier points that I made, in D2C, it's very hard to build a moat because first is product can be easily copied. Second is distribution channels are same for anyone. You can't create your unique distribution channels. Even for your companies which grow, right? What is moat for them at end of the day?
I think different companies have different modes. I think the most common and the most underappreciated one is customer love. Let's say if you're creating a brand, let's go to a basic thing. What is a brand? If I keep two identical things, right, consistently a customer is going to choose one over the other. And that force is essentially the customer love. Okay, that's the power of the brand. Now, see, most of the people, what I've seen and where they get it wrong is they don't invest behind their customer love, okay, or they don't take that to be the moat. The moment you make this the moat, right? Trust me, most of the other things kind of start falling into place. I'll give you a small example. Again, one of our initial investments, Soul Store, right? It was they as a TG they used to largely cater to fans. So whether it was a football club, whether it's a cricket thing, whether it's Batman, Superman, anything that you kind of see on the small or the large screen, right? You are catering to fans. If you're catering to fans, you need to speak their language. Okay, so let's say very interesting thing. If you would have ever written, look, every company there is going to be some customer grievance or the other, right? The customer is going to send a email to you, my order was not delivered, yeah, something wrong was basically sent to me, etc. Right? A standard reply would be, thanks for reaching out to us, I'm sorry that you had to face this, we will try and kind of revert back to you in X amount of hours, etc., like thanking you, sorry again, etc. Right? But if you're catering to, let's say, a fan, let's say someone has bought a Star Wars t-shirt, okay, they'll have the whole template of that email basis of Star Wars, okay, and they'll address you as one of the characters, etc. They will end with, let's say, may the force be with you. Looks small stuff like that. Now what happens even in that sort of a case where there's a customer grievance, the customer is so astounded by, wow, this is something really really cool, okay, the customer love kind of goes up. You do that consistently 3 or 4 times and you will actually start seeing that. So it's not that like there are no other Superman or Batman t-shirts available there in the market. Probably there'll be 100 companies, but like TSS is here, others are like not even here. And that's the difference, right? And that's the best example that I can give you, in terms of a mode that TSS has. Other than the fact, end of the day, sells you a round neck printed round neck t-shirt, right? Which probably 1,000 other brands do it.
Correct. Because on the product differentiation side, right, the competitors will somehow copy you, build you. Even the large players like Unilevers of the world, once they see something working, either they'll try you to buy you out, or if it's that's not possible, they'll try to copy you out because
Yeah,
they have like some of the best brand managers inside the company, which they have hired from best B
yeah.
schools in India.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. See, so you are right. You are right. And that's why, let's say, the other thing, at least what we advise all our portfolios, and this is something that we're very, very sticky with. Look, you can be a jack of all trades, but you can only be a master of, probably a few, right? In each and every company of ours, we'll have at least one hero product, right? And we really, really double down on our hero products or our hero positioning. Okay. Yes, I know you started the conversation saying that, every brand wants to do everything within that umbrella. Okay. We slightly shy away from that philosophy. We always advise our portfolio founders, be really good at something. Okay. Unless and until you're seeing a glass ceiling in that particular product, do not go and expand to something else, right? And also, just let's say in a brand lingo term, there is a brand core. So you kind of create products around that brand core. You will only move away from that core if you're either doing some sort of a disruptive play or you're doing, a very, very large play. In a normal course of thing, it's very rare that I would see a personal care company actually going and selling apparel. So because that's actually changing the brand core. So ancillaries, we are completely okay with changing the brand core. We've not done it in any of the companies.
There's a very interesting point, Abhishek. Founders can take away from it, and I think it's a balance, right? Till what point of time your hero products hits the ceiling, and is there an opportunity to capture a category rather than just being a hero product company?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And see, that's what you would also see. I mean, just think from all the incumbent brands, right? Given, Maggie is as cult as a product can get. Okay. Maggie could have gone into n number of fooding items, right? But they kind of stayed really, really true to their core. Okay. One product, get like a monster market share within that, whether it's a Maggie, whether it's a coconut milk, etc. Multiple, even baby food as a category. Just think about it, right? Nestle is the only one that kind of comes into your mind. So amongst all, you will find this as a common thread across all brands, whether it's a Unilever brand, whether it's a P&G brand, whether it's a, Nestle brand, right? And I think this formula works. You just thoda discipline, thoda patience.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for the nuggets of wisdom. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it's been a fantastic conversation for me.
Likewise, Siddharth. I really enjoyed it a lot. Thanks so much for having me there.